Britain sending an unprecedented number of Eurosceptic MEPs to Brussels, and that's not just from UKIP. We'll have the results of a special Daily Politics survey of MEPs which reveals their views on free movement of people, the euro, and whether we should just quit altogether. The makeup of Britain's MEPs is radically different from the last Parliament. If you don't believe me, just ask the Lib Dems. So being the fine public service broadcasters that we are, we thought we'd carry out a survey to try and give you a flavour of what our European parliamentarians believe in. We contacted all 73 British MEPs and we asked them 4 questions on the key European issues: EU membership, the euro, EU expansion and border controls. 52 got back to us. So what did we find out? Joko, as always, has the answers.
UKIP had the biggest contingent within the UK's representation, 24 MEPs, of which 17 took part. As you'd expect for a party formed to get the UK out of Europe, they were of one mind, all agreeing that the UK should leave the EU if membership couldn't be changed, that EU citizens' freedom of movement across borders should be restricted, and that the European Union shouldn't accept any more new members. Quelle surprise! They all disagreed with the UK joining the euro, even if the conditions were right. So what about the party for whom Europe historically isn't a unifier but a divider, the Conservatives? All but one Tory MEP answered our questionnaire, with most of the grouping leaning towards Eurosceptic positions. Perhaps surprisingly, 13 MEPs agreed that the UK should leave the EU if the present terms of membership couldn't be changed significantly. 12 agreed that the EU citizens' freedom of movement across borders should be restricted, and all but one disagreed with the idea of the UK ever joining the euro. But that didn't mean they wanted to stop others joining Europe. 12 out of the 18 didn't think new countries should be stopped from joining the EU. So what about the more pro-European parties? We spoke to every single Liberal Democrat MEP for our survey, or rather, the single Liberal Democrat MEP. As you would guess, they disagreed with the UK leaving the EU if membership couldn't be changed, agreed that the UK should join the euro if the economic conditions are right, disagreed with freezing EU enlargement, and disagreed with restricting EU citizens' freedom of movement. But whilst we got pretty straight answers from the Lib Dem, the Tories and UKIP, Labour got themselves into a bit of an EU tizzy. 8 of their 20 MEPs took part before someone high up decided they weren't going to answer individually, but instead give us a group answer. Out of the 8 we spoke to, though, all 8 disagreed with the UK leaving the EU if the terms of membership couldn't be changed. And most disagreed with restricting freedom of movement and restricting new countries from joining. On the question of joining the euro, 4 agreed, 2 disagreed and 2 didn't answer. And the rest? Well, we're still waiting for the group statement we were promised. Now, as you heard there, Labour said that they would give us a response to our survey, and they've just sent one in, just as we were going on here. Very helpful. It's rather long, but in summary, they don't think it's in Britain's interest to leave the EU. They don't support joining the euro at present. They would consider each new country joining on its merit. And while they support free movement, they think its impact should be, quote, managed. Well, we're joined now by Jane Collins. She's a brand new UKIP MEP, just finding her way around the Parliament. I'm sure everyone's been very friendly to you, but let me go to Chris Bryant first. Why did Labour make...
I agree with everything in that statement.
Why did Labour make such a fuss about its MEPs answering these questions?
Well, because I think sometimes when the BBC or newspapers do these kind of surveys, they're often based on hypothetical questions, as 3 of these were. They start with the word if. And they're not very informative. I don't think it's a very good way of doing debate. So, on the whole, when I get those kind of surveys, I don't reply either.
But they're quite straightforward. They're questions of our time and of our agenda. If we can't renegotiate, should we leave? Should the European Union accept... But what's wrong with the question, should the European Union accept new member countries?
Well, let's see if there is another country that wants to join. Croatia is in the process of going forward towards accession. I think that once it's completed its whole processes and it has adopted the whole of the acquis communautaire, then yes, it probably should join the European Union, but that's a moment that will come in the future.
So why couldn't you let your MEPs just answer like that?
Well, because you're not allowed to provide that whole answer, are you? What you wanted was a yes-no from everybody. Well, so I'll give you an answer, and I'll extend my answer as well on that particular one, because I'd say that it would be good in the long term if the whole of the Balkans was in such a state that it was able to join the European Union. But that's not on the table at the moment. Well, I think Turkey, yes, we support Turkey's eventual membership. I think you'd have to have a very different understanding of freedom of movement before that could happen, and I don't see it happening in the next 10 years.
All right, let's come on to this freedom of movement issue. What does better managed mean?
Well, for instance, I think that it is wrong in the United Kingdom now that you have companies that advertise for jobs that will only be performed in the United Kingdom, which are only advertised in Polish in Poland. Now, I think that it's morally indefensible. I think it's bad economics for the United Kingdom, and we should make that illegal. I actually think that Brussels should be considering that's not a good way of managing free movement within the Union as well. So I support free movement, but I also want to say that it needs to be managed. You need to have laws to make sure that some workers, local workers, are not being permanently undercut from outside.
But that, as you know, would have no more than a marginal effect on the movement of people.
No, I think it would have a dramatic effect.
I think it would have a dramatic effect. How many migrants now working in Britain got their jobs through migrant-only job displays?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, then how could you, if you don't know the answer, how can you know it would have a dramatic effect?
Because I've seen many instances last year where that was specifically...
Many instances is not dramatic.
Well,
if you don't know the numbers, you can have no idea what the impact would be.
I think it would be significant.
You seem, therefore, to accept in the remarks you've just made that the huge flood of immigration into Britain and under Labour years did affect the wages of lower-paid people.
I haven't said... I didn't use... Those are your words.
No, you did, actually.
I didn't
You said driving down wages.
I did not use the word flood. And I think that kind of language is inappropriate. I think sometimes, and you've engaged in it now, there's a degree of alarmism that is brought into the debate. But
do you accept the principle that it reduced wages, or don't you?
I think it had an effect. I don't think it had the dramatic effect that some people sometimes suggest. I don't think that there are millions of people elsewhere in the European Union that are wanting to come to the UK and to take our jobs. I dislike all that kind of language. I think it's inappropriate.
Liam Fox, if the UK's present term of EU membership terms can't be changed significantly, the UK should leave the EU. How do you answer that?
Well, if we are to continue on the current trajectory towards ever closer union, my personal view would be that I would rather leave than stay under those terms.
Should David Cameron say that if he can't get a major repatriation of powers, then he would recommend we leave the EU?
Well, that will be a decision for him, and I'm not going to put words in the Prime Minister's mouth.
It's true you're struggling, aren't you, as a group to form or find partners to form a group in the European Parliament at the moment, aren't you?
I think we've made significant progress with that in the last few days, but I think that's up to Nigel to discuss. But I think we will form a group, yes.
Why have you rejected working with Marine Le Pen's Front National, for example? They share your Eurosceptic views.
Well, they may share a Eurosceptic view, but they don't share the rest of our views. To start with, the racist element of her party is something that we just can't accept.
Who would you like to join with in the European Parliament to further your wanting of Britain to withdraw from the EU?
Well, obviously, as many Eurosceptics as we can, but
you're struggling to find them, so...
No, I think that Nigel has made significant progress with that in the last few days, so I'm going to leave it...
Can you tell us with whom?
No, I'm going to leave it for him to announce when he's got things finalised.
Right, but do you know who he's been talking to at least, and where this progress is going?
I think he's got to announce that.
Right, but you're not worried about where you're actually going to be standing in future. What about the President, the European Commission President? Presumably you're not going to be backing Jean-Claude Juncker as a federalist who wants further integration. So who are you backing?
We're not... Well, it's a very difficult question for me to ask because basically we want withdrawal from the EU. So whichever president you look at, Martin Schulz or whoever, it's for more integration. So we're really not going to back any particular president.
Right, but don't you need to engage in the process? You're here. You topped the poll, admittedly with your Eurosceptic agenda. But is the idea then just to frustrate, just to distort, just to go against everything that's here?
No.
People will ask, what was the point?
No, definitely not. Look, we're a democratic party that is fighting for freedom. We're fighting for the control of our borders back. And within the EU... we are here to be the eyes and the ears of the people that voted for us. And yes, we are going to get involved in the voting system on things that should be voted for or against, but we're not actually here to be part of this enormous big out of control union. So yes, we're not going to be obstructive or rude.
You're not going to be obstructive. What are you going to
rude.
vote on? You say you are going to vote on things that matter. Give me some examples of things you'll vote on or vote
Well,
for.
at this moment in time, with it being my second day,
I grant you.
I think I'm going to skip that one.
Plenty of time.
Yeah.
But you say you're not going to be obstructive, but you are here. You will be claiming your salary, of course, you and your fellow UKIP MPs. People out there, you may be going to be the eyes and ears of people who voted for you, but what will you do tangibly then? What would you say to your constituents in that sense?
I think we've got to look at the things that is controlled by the EU: energy, immigration, the euro, and obviously work directives and legislation. All these things have a negative impact on individual countries, and we are here to make sure that the directives that are put through, the people who voted for us, they know about them. They know the impact they're going to have at home, and also about the deluge of useless legislation that comes out, like the shape of bananas, and where you can import your melons from, and all sorts of ridiculous things that get spewed out every single day.
Chris Bryant will say those are myths, no doubt.
They're not.
I was just rolling my eyes, I'm afraid. It's just nonsense.
No,
Right.
it's not. They're not myths, actually. And in fact, if next week, if you want, I'll put the directive on the table for you for the shape of bananas.
Why are you rolling your eyes, Chris?
Well, because I think actually what most voters in Britain would want, I grant that many are Eurosceptic and believe that we should leave the European Union, but I think that they would want MEPs who are genuinely going to engage in the process here, because directives about working at height, for instance, will make a difference as to whether people die at work. And having the same rules across the whole.
Chris, can't our own government decide those? Do we actually need a European Union to tell us at what height we can work?
As I understand it, you want a shared market.
What does our own MPs do?
As I understand it, you want a common market. If you're going to have the same, and for a common market, you need to have the same rules.
No, you don't.
Of course
you don't. No, you don't.
You need to have the same standards.
What do our own MPs do
Chris
if we
Bryant,
can't decide that for ourselves?
So, Liam Fox, you are agreeing here with Jane Collins. There's a lot of agreement, isn't there, between your view of Europe and the Eurosceptic view, and obviously with Jane's view in UKIP?
There's a key question here, which has always been a key question about the single market, which is whether it should be a market of mutual recognition like NAFTA, or whether it's a market of harmonisation. We've gone down the route of harmonisation. The consequence of that is we've imported lots and lots of laws that we don't need for actually the single market to function.
One in 4 people go to Spain every year, 1 in 6 go to Greece, and the largest investor
go on holiday
in the UK
to Europe,
is
we have
French.
to be part of the European
Union. And consequently, you do need. There's no point in turning our backs on the reality of life, which is an interconnected world, an interconnected Europe.
I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you.
Can I just check, Chris Bryant, you said it was Labour policy to support Croatia's membership of the EU.
In the long term, it's not finished yet as a process.
Well, it joined in July last year.
Oh, sorry. Well done.
I'm not sure if you're ahead or behind the game.
I feel caught. You've caught me. You can tell me
Croatia
off.
became a full member, the 20th country of the European Union, in July the 1st, 2013.
Mr Juncker, are you certain you'll be Commission President?
I don't give interviews now.
Do you mind that Britain are trying to stop you becoming President?
I'm not the spokesman of the British Prime Minister.
What do you think of the British Prime Minister?
Mr Cameron's views towards your candidacy, Mr Juncker? Jean-Claude as Klartext.
Yeah.
Do you have any message for people in Britain who are interested in your candidacy?
They hear a lot about you, but they don't hear from you.
We're not doing no interviews.
You have a sense of humour I'm admiring.
We've got a plum spot here in the European Parliament. We've got some Euro-coloured balls. And we're going to ask people this question. Who's got the best vision for Europe? David Cameron or Jean-Claude Juncker, the man who'd quite like to be President of the Commission? Oh, what does that mean?
None of those.
If we have to choose, then it's going to go here.
Choose between us two.
What's Mr Juncker got over Mr Cameron?
More experience in European politics.
I'll go for Juncker.
Yeah, why is that?
Because I live in Luxembourg, so...
Oh, so you're biased. Have you heard of someone called Jean-Claude Juncker?
Of course!
Yeah, why is Cameron your man?
I don't want to tell you.
Oh, it's secret. Who do you prefer?
Juncker.
Yeah, 100%? Why do you like Mr Juncker?
Why not?
What does Austria think of David Cameron?
I like this boy.
Oh.
But I don't understand him really.
So we've been rained on, thrown out of the European Parliament, rained on again. And look, David Cameron, I'm afraid you don't have that many friends here.